Welcome, everyone. This is the Global Wellness Institute's Workplace Wellbeing Initiative virtual summit in June for the month of workplace wellbeing. And a pleasure to host the session today on executive wellbeing and visible permission for employees. And I'm delighted to introduce our two key speakers today. We have Lisa Kelly, who's president and founder of Kelly Wellness Consulting and the Workplace Wellness Center of Excellence, which is a global workplace wellness trainer, consultant, and executive coach. She's been cultivating healthy changes within organizations and individuals for over 25 years through many different types of avenues, workplace wellness certification programs, and consulting services. So I'm continuing to admit people, but just wanted to introduce again, Lisa Kelly. And we also then have Melody Byblow. And Melody, welcome, Melody. Thank you for joining us today. Melody's passion and purpose for creating workplace wellness programs is inspired by her 25 years working in high-stress culture environments. She experienced firsthand how unhealthy workplace culture affects personal health, from her resulting in burnout and fibromyalgia. Her resourcefulness and pursuit of wellness led her to training at CSNN, which provided the foundation for her recovery and more. Holistic health was the catalyst for her personal health transformation and understanding the intricate connection between our environments, chronic stress, food, and well-being. And Melody's experience and continued pursuit of excellence in workplace wellness and other training has provided her thought leadership through extraordinary perspectives. So welcome to both of you. I'm Elizabeth Backrad. I'm part of the Workplace Wellbeing Initiative, and I'm delighted to hand it over to both of you for the session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's great to be here. And a big thank you to John Toomey and the Global Wellness Institute for inviting us to participate in this summit. So John referenced or framed this event, I guess, for us as a fireside style chat. So we're going to do just that. And in the chat, I've actually put some links. And at some point, maybe towards the end, I'll bring up some more information about how you can connect with us for those who are watching the replay. But if you're participating, if you want to connect with us on LinkedIn or what have you, you can certainly go to the chat and do so. So yeah, so we're going to just have a chat this evening about executive well-being and also the topic of visible permission, which actually I guess we kind of coined or introduced in my book, Cultivating Healthy and Vibrant Workplaces. And I'll be referring to the book periodically throughout our discussion here tonight. But what we want to really talk about is just that, executive well-being and visible permission. But before we do that, I thought it might be nice, because it's an evening for a lot of us perhaps, to just do a quick little breath exercise and a nice little relaxation exercise. And it'll just take a minute or so. So many of you may already know it's a 4, 7, 8 breaths. So we'll just do 1 or 2 rounds, and then I'll show you the next exercise. So just kind of really ground yourself in your chair, and I'll do the same. And Melody, you can have eyes open, closed, whatever works for you. But I invite you to take a deep breath in for 4 counts and really just fill up right from the diaphragm. Breathe in. And just hold it. Now we're going to hold it for 7 seconds. Now we're going to slowly exhale for 8 counts. Totally release that air. Let's do it one more time. We're going to breathe in for 4 and hold for 7. And slowly out. Let all that air out and then just return to your normal breathing. Now, what I also like to do as well, and this helps maybe like before a presentation like this, or, in between appointments, and seeing we're talking about executive well-being. Like I know lots of times executives are going from meeting to meeting and don't have that 10-minute buffer even sometimes. It's just nice to have a little exercise such as the 4, 7, 8 breath, or, if you're really feeling neck and tension in your shoulders, I like to take my palms and just go up to the top of the base of your, neck, or top of your neck, the base of your skull, and just take your fingers, probably these, and with a little bit of pressure. Now, again, provided there's no contraindication with your neck, then just very gently to, what works for you, come in and go down each vertebrae. So you're just going to go down and you're going to breathe in and out. So we're going to go down and then just go follow each of the 7 vertebrae in your cervical column. Breathing in and out and just go on a diagonal from each of them. Just feel that tension. This is such a nice exercise to do, you know, throughout the day, especially if you're feeling that tension. Maybe you can start off a team meeting with it and then grab a hold of your shoulders with your fingers and then just bring it forward, right? And then just do that along. And don't forget to integrate your breath. And there you go. And then you can work your way back. And then if you want to go up and do the neck again on the cervical, but then just like feel, just, and you know, again, incorporate the breath, but just feel the difference in that short little couple of minute exercise. So if you're an executive or you work with executives, yeah, you know, these couple little exercises are great takeaways to share with them. Okay, so in this chat this evening, we're going to talk again about what is executive well-being and some data and ROI around that. And what are some influencers on executive well-being? What are the downstream impacts of unhealthy leaders and unhealthy leadership styles? What are the benefits of healthy, thriving executives on both personal and organizational well-being? And, you know, what's that concept of visible permission? We'll talk about that. And then what are some opportunities to support executive well-being? So it may be a linear discussion or it may kind of dovetail in and out of those topics. And so Melody is actually a graduate of our programs and one of our certified executive wellness coaches. So Melody is here tonight to help, you know, participate and guide this conversation as well. So you all ready, Mel?
Yes.
Alrighty, good stuff. Okay, so let's get started. So what is executive well-being and why should we care? Why should we prioritize it, right? And I'll just start off with a little quote that I just love, and it's on one of our web pages. It says, in the first half of our lives, we sacrifice our health for our wealth. Then in the second half, we spend our wealth to regain our health. Now, Melody, not to put you on the spot, but when I read that quote by inspired by the Dalai Lama, what comes to mind?
Oh, I've seen it way too often. In fact, years ago when I was still, working in high stress corporate land, and I was, working in downtown Toronto, working with lawyers of really big law firms and that sort of thing. And we were doing consulting all the time and creating products and pieces of work. And I noticed like one by one, like senior lawyers were dropping out of the picture. And I don't mean dropping dead, although I'm sure that's, it has happened too, but they were going on permanent stress leave, permanent disability. And it started happening in my workplace too. And then I noticed my own health, like really struggling. And I was only in my early 40s. And it became just so apparent to me, something's really wrong here with this picture. But it wasn't until far after, I went to pursue my own health recovery and my formal education in holistic health that it finally occurred to me, like, wow, I mean, the stress in workplaces and the cultures is off the charts. And this is what's really impacting a lot of people. And it manifests, it shows up differently in different people. So whatever your sort of genetic weaknesses are, compounded by poor food choices, lack of exercise, lack of sleep, lack of all of those beneficial things, right? It just compounds. And so I like to look at it as, and pointing out too, and this may be obvious to some people if you're aware of holistic health and have done some education on it, but if you're not, I remember people used to joke about, once you hit 40, that's kind of over the hill. And you might go to the doctor with some complaints and ailments, and they'll just tell you, oh, that's normal for after 40. That's just normal for those issues to development. And here's your prescription. And the truth of the matter is, it's not normal. It's common. And there's a very big distinction between normal.
Well, I guess it could be cited maybe that it could be normal for, let's just, again, we're talking about executives, normal for more executives who, do not prioritize their health, right? And we sacrifice our health for the wealth. And, it's when we get on that hamster.
I'd still say though, it's common, and it's common because of all those extenuating issues that are compounding.
Yeah. Or we're just so
it's not
busy.
normal
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just get so busy, that we just, you lose sight of things. You're on that hamster wheel, right? And this applies to not just executives, pretty well everyone, with a pulse, right? But it does predominantly happen. And, just a couple other quotes and we'll move on. But like making time, whether an executive or an employer, whomever, but really, again, we're talking about executives tonight, but making time for self-care really is a non-negotiable if you want to be an effective leader, a high-performing leader. And it really is the most important investment they can make in themselves is their well-being. The adage, if we don't have our health, we have nothing, right? And so again, to our audience here, if you are working with senior leaders, right, as a coach, an HR person, whomever, workplace wellness leader, if you have not dialed in and tapped into supporting senior leaders and managers, I really encourage you to listen tonight and get what you can out of it. Contact one of us, see how we can help you. But you really, that's your relationship. That relationship building is, as a workplace wellness or HR professional, will make or break in some regards the success of your efforts, right? It really will. So, and just another statistic here that I grabbed from my book, like a gentleman, Dr. Walter Gammon, said that when a company changes C-level executives, maybe, or loses them through ill health or stress, burnout, what have you, there can be a ripple effect to the company's stock. But when investors learn of an unexpected illness of an executive, the effects can be like a 7.0 on the Richter scale. He argues point blank, executive health is simply good for business. And
Well, and even further to that, though, I think, a lot of senior executives' roles is how to mitigate risk in business.
yes,
And health is one of those big risks. You don't have control over everything they do, like your employees or your leaders. I mean, it doesn't matter, but you can influence making better choices, right? And so mitigating risk is, it's got to be, up there on the top 10 of business objectives, right?
Yeah, well, I was going to introduce this a little later on, but in the title of our presentation or discussion tonight, we talk about visible permission, right? And so I actually have a little definition. I'm just trying to find it because I really want to, it's very nice and succinct. And I think you just mentioned about the factor around influencing, right? And so that's exactly what visible permission. I'll just read out the definition. It's just, and I think I got this from our book or somewhere else, but visible permission, particularly again with reference to executives, refers to a leadership practice where executives actively demonstrate and communicate their commitment to well-being. So it's really, it's that adage of leading by example. And it really helps create a culture where employees really feel empowered. So it's about empowering themselves and empowering their employees to prioritize their well-being. And this is the key, without fear or judgment or repercussion. And so by visibly prioritizing their health and balance and well-being as leaders, senior leaders, managers, whomever, they are setting a standard and reassuring employees that it's acceptable to do the same. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, okay, that's all fine and good on paper, Lisa, but how do we manifest and actualize that in our environments, in our workplaces? Well, again, that's what we want to talk about, but I really want you to think about and hold, uppermost and top of mind, that concept of visible permission. And again, if you get nothing else out of this, is just think about what can I do in my role, in my capacity, to encourage and promote visible permission by senior leadership, by managers, first line managers, whomever, right? Yeah. So again, Melody, anything come to mind when I just share that definition around visible permission?
Well, exactly. And I think, there's loads of examples that, come up with, right down to, is somebody going to the gym? Is somebody going for a walk? Is somebody taking 5 minutes out to do like a little quiet meditation in their office with the door closed before their next meeting?
Yeah.
Are they ordering, some fast food restaurant for lunch, or are they bringing a salad and
Ordering
some healthy
donuts for their
protein
team meetings?
well, exactly. Like there's all kinds of little cues
Yeah.
that you can lean towards healthier versions, or you can lean towards unhealthy versions. I know I remember, downtown Toronto, very often there was, the Run for the Cure and those kinds of things, and great initiatives for, team development and that sort of thing, and to get, lots of people involved in these things. But every single time I saw those snack tables, they were full of donuts. They were full of like absolute junk food. And you're thinking, this is such a disconnect.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to promote health and you're trying to, yet you've
Yeah.
got,
Yeah.
you know, the candy zone, right? So
Yeah, Melody, someone
so
in the chat,
small things.
yeah, someone in the chat just asked if I'd read out the definition again. So I certainly will do that. So visible permission, again, particularly from executives, refers to a leadership practice where executives actively demonstrate and communicate their commitment to well-being habits. And again, as I said, it really helps create that culture where employees feel empowered to prioritize their own well-being, again, and this is important, without fear of judgment or repercussion. And they're really, again, walking the talk, leading by example, setting that standard that reassures employees, empowers employees that it's acceptable to do the same. Okay, so thank you for that question.
And it's a
So,
positive influence, you know, and I
yeah,
think too, you know, you can't, there's subtleties around, like, you know, you can't outright necessarily ban candy, but you can say, you know, we don't want the communal candy jar anymore, kind of thing.
well, you know what we talk about is crowding out the unhealthy stuff with the
Exactly.
healthy stuff, right?
Put the fruit basket there instead, you
Yeah.
know, have a communal fruit basket instead.
Yeah.
You know, subtle things, but, you know, having a positive influence. Yeah.
So, you know, coming back to like why executive well-being, why should we care about it? Why should we prioritize it, right? It's not rocket science, obviously, that, you know, a healthy leadership team will help create a healthy organization, healthy employee base, right? But what's interesting too, I just want to read out another statistic. There is a bit of a disconnect out there. Well, actually, let me back up for a second. You know, in some reports by Deloitte, this is really interesting. It said, I'll read out a statistic. It said 75% of employees and 89% of C-suite surveyed said that improving their well-being is a top priority for them. And that same report found that 68% of employees and 81% of C-suite executives say that working on their well-being is more important than advancing their careers. Now that's really interesting. Yeah, 68.
I'm surprised at those
I know,
numbers.
I
Really
know.
surprised.
And at 91% of the respondents shared that they have goals for their well-being, you know, but here's the other thing as well. Now, this is really another study by Deloitte. And I just love these statistics. And I'll read this out, just we can talk about it then. Another study by them found that 70% of C-suite executives would switch companies for a job that supports their well-being, and 81% said their wellness is more important than being promoted. Now, this is a really big one. Only 56% of employees think their company executives care about their well-being, while 91% of the C-suite think their employees believe they care about their well-being. So, you know, perception versus reality, right? And there's
Exactly.
such a big disconnect. Like 91% of C-suite feel that they're prioritizing employee well-being and demonstrating that. Yet 56% of surveyed employees think that, you know, executives care about their well-being. And this is a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
Go
say
ahead.
I think it falls down to like intention versus actions, you know.
Yes.
And
We're walking the talk.
I mean, I know people who work at Deloitte and that sort of thing, and their workday hours were just as long as mine. Mind you, that was a decade ago. But there's, you know, like I said, like the snack table or the craft table for, you know, some healthy event being full of junk food. These are unintentional disconnects. This comes from a lack of awareness, you know, and I'm not blaming anybody. It's just they haven't been sort of educated on where all these small nuances come in. Same thing with, you know, unrealistic deadlines, adding stress, adding, you know, more to the workload than is reasonable. And those things contribute more to stress than you could possibly know. And if an employee is feeling like they don't care about my health or they don't care about me because they keep piling all this work on, that's a stressful culture. And, you know, and a lot of people would refer to that as a toxic culture. So I think
So
there's
let's
a
just
lot of
talk
room
about,
to talk about differences, nuances, and those kinds of things that they just don't know what they don't know.
So let me just speak. Yeah, thank you for that. Let me just pick on that or speak on that for a second. Now, you know that obviously, you know, you supported myself and another graduate of our programs, another executive wellness coach during COVID in working with a team of 8 executives at a hospital in Ohio, Genesis. And I profiled them in our book. without naming names, one of the individuals of that team that I coached, so it was a group wellness program, and we also did one-on-one coaching with each of the 8 between Melody and myself and Sheena. Now, the person I coached, I asked him, now, in fairness to him, he was really active. He would active in the mornings. He would do his fitness and his exercise. Yet, after getting in his car and driving in, that's where his activity level just hit a wall, right? And so I said to him, how do you decompress? How do you take a break during the day? He said, well, I walk to the washroom. That was his form of decompressing. And yet this person was very active and like literally, and I know this team, like, and I don't think they mind me sharing this. I talk about it in the book with their permission, but like a lot of executives, they literally bump up one meeting to the other. I think for some of them, with some coaching and working with their assistants, we managed to get them to put in like a 5 or 10 minute breather in between meetings, right? But, to that point, coming back to visible permission. So an example of a visible permission for, say, one of those leaders we coached, and we talked about this with them, is to, not just the washroom, but, maybe on their lunch break, strap on their sneakers, go for a walk or go up and down the stairway, be seen in the cafeteria, breaking bread with employees, having a salad or whatever, a healthy lunch, or just not confined to, so it's getting out there. Just having lunch. Yeah. I mean, seriously, lots of times they're grabbing their lunch, going into a meeting. And in my Executive Wellness Unplugged newsletter series on LinkedIn, I just talked about the incidence of GERD and acid reflux. And you think back to the commercials, right, of people popping the Tums or the antacids because, for one, stress is really bad for heartburn and GERD. It's a big promoter.
It's bad for your digestion, period. Yeah.
Really, absolutely. And as is stress. So you got the compounding of shoving a hamburger or a sandwich down your, in the meeting, and you're stressed and tense. I mean, it's just the perfect storm, right, for GERD and heartburn, and God knows what other inflammation, cortisol raising types of incidents happening in the body, right? Yeah. But, just a few, I just love these statistics, and they're scary in a sense, but it said CEOs work about 77% of daylight hours. So for those of you just to try and think, how critical is the issue around executive well-being, right? Even though a lot of them say they prioritize their well-being, some of these statistics might question that, right? And even before the pandemic, CEOs were putting in an average of 62.5 hours a week through the year. 41% of senior leaders are reportedly under immense stress. 36% are indicating high levels of exhaustion. 74% of leaders face obstacles when it comes to achieving their well-being goals. 69% are thinking about quitting because they're in a terrible state of well-being. And 70% of senior leaders believe burnout affects their decision-making. So, when we think about the ROI of executive well-being, or bringing in an executive wellness coach, or hiring a contracting executive wellness coaches like the hospital did with us, the ROI is incredible. Like, it's reported that there's an ROI of between 500% and 700% for executive coaching and executive wellness coaching, right?
Yeah,
That,
I believe it. And it's probably much higher. I mean, it really depends on what they factored into the ROI, but
yeah,
I think, the benefits are so immeasurable in so many other ways. One of the people I coached as well, think about the family impacts of this one. He had biomarkers off the charts that were really related to stress and not so good food choices and poor sleep and all kinds of things. And he had some particular family, I'll just say, issues that required a lot of attention from him and his wife 24/7. Like, it was very intensive. And so he just figured, I'll deal with stress. I'll deal with all that. I'm going to retire in 5 years. And I honestly was afraid that
he wasn't going to see his retirement. Yeah.
There wouldn't be. And, we had a really frank conversation, and he took it seriously. And at that very next day, he booked a campground for him and his family for the entire season. And he did it.
Yeah.
He
And,
did not miss
again, kudos to you, and maybe to the contract that they brought us in, right? And it was actually the CEO who initiated this contract, which kind of blew my mind. They're a hospital in the middle of COVID, in the middle of a pandemic, so stressed and pressured with all the demands on the hospital. And yet this CEO and their chief HR had the foresight to recognize that we need to do something for our senior leadership team. They're burning out really quick. And there was a lot of hesitation by them, of course, because they got so much on their plate. Now they're asked to show up for these coaching sessions and some group wellness. But in the end, it just proved to be so valuable, so valuable for them, right?
Well, they didn't know what they were getting into.
Yeah,
And they were
in a good
pleasantly
way.
surprised
Yeah.
at how much stress release tools and techniques and skill sets that we're able to bring to the table. And a lot of them are so simple to do. They're not,
Well,
they don't require a lot of effort. They just
no.
require an awareness and just, oh, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
That's easy,
Well, even in, as you did, I know I did, doing some of the like the breathing exercises, I did EFT with them, what have you. And they were prompted, given the space to engage in that during the coaching sessions, right? Because they probably, even if they knew they should do that, we all know we should deep breathe during the day. How many of us, unless we're yoga teachers, take time during the day, especially executives, do that, right? And I just got to share a quick little story here about mindfulness. And I was by a presenter, expert on mindfulness, and I watched it on YouTube, I think. And he shared he was in an executive meeting one day, brought in to talk about mindfulness. And so he just sat there and was really pensive and quiet, didn't say anything. And it might have been a minute, but it seemed like probably eternity to the executives. So eventually one of them piped up and they said, with all due respect, when are you going to start talking about mindfulness? And he said, I started 5 minutes ago. Right. So, it's just giving that downtime, doing that breath work, just giving that space, right? If you're leading a group of executives or facilitating a meeting, just as I did tonight, just really open up with a little exercise to help them decompress, right? And help yourself decompress. I did it as much for me tonight. Had a busy day. Did it as much for me tonight to sort of decompress before I got into this discussion, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, again, what are the downstream impacts of not attending to their health and well-being? And Melody, while I'm talking about this, you can just check the chat, maybe also see if there's some questions or comments you want to read out. Does anyone want in the chat, would you like to comment on that or your own experiences maybe, and we can read them out, or a question relating to that? Like, what are the downstream impacts of unhealthy leaders, unhealthy leadership styles, visible permission? And we got some other things we want to talk about, but I just want to give you that time now as an audience participants to ask questions or comments. Yeah.
Yeah, there is one in the chat. I'll just read it out here. It's from Alina. She says, I'm surprised that there needs to be any mention of fear of reprisal for an executive to prioritize well-being. Can you say more about that? I think, you know what? There are people in executive leadership roles who aren't fans of people going to the gym, aren't fans of people even taking lunch outside of the office, aren't fans of people taking a legitimate 15-minute, coffee room break. I mean, there's a lot of people in leadership positions that frown on that. And because they don't do it, they frown on their staff doing it. And so, not every workplace has these types in their workplace. There's still,
or has a CEO
exist.
like I just described, who initiated this type of a contract, right? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Or you know what, maybe it's somebody who just thinks that working out or any sort of health initiatives must happen outside of the office hours time. I mean, there's all kinds of things, positions on the continuum of where, people can be on that. But I think, especially with people like in salaried positions, where I think people who are on hourly sort of things, they're tend to have a little bit more structure around, oh, you get a 15-minute break if you have a 5-hour shift. I don't know what parameters already more on those kinds of things. But when you're on a salaried position and you're full time, when you start at 8 or 9 a.m. and your workday is supposed to be till 5, how often is that a reality?
Well, one thing absolutely. One thing we experienced and was commonly cited during COVID, and probably still to this day, because we haven't talked about what happens now in this virtual or hybrid work environment that many companies are still in. Some are moving out of it, but many are still there. And I don't think hybrid is going anywhere. I think if anything, virtual work environment is just going to gain more speed and steam as time goes on. I think the genie's out of the bottle, as they say. But with respect to the virtual work environment, right? So as senior leaders, how do they attend to their personal well-being? So maybe in the work site, they're really attentive to it and demonstrate visible permission. And what happens now when they're working from home or the employees are working from home. We heard many stories, and I have, friends and family who say, I get working at home and I forget to eat and forget to take time to get up and stretch. Whereas maybe in the workplace, I might have done that more, gone chat to a fellow employee in another cubicle, what have you, right? So how do we address that now with our leadership and those who are workplace wellness professionals watching this or participating tonight? How are you approaching or addressing this, right, with your leadership in terms of connecting again with your leadership? So making sure they're taking care of their well-being, especially at home, whatever. And so that also they're walking the talk and leading visible information. So it's hard to see them if we're more remote. So, I'll let you share here, Melody, and anyone else, but I would suggest, again, when we did this contract, we did executive wellness circles. So we would have a meeting with them once a month as part of their team meeting. And we would do sometimes fun things, which might seem really silly to an executive group. Like we did a bingo game of superfoods. They loved it. They laughed. They had so much fun. And you might think, oh, we couldn't do that with executives, but yeah, like do it. As silly as it might seem, because they have this armor on, right? Sometimes they got to be stoic and they got to be an executive. They can't, but they just in the close quarters, they just love letting it. And it was so team building and so cathartic, right? Yeah. And you could just see their energy and their laugh. And we had them in teams, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So again, maybe talking about the virtual environment. So maybe as within the executive group or managers leading their teams, reach out to your workplace wellness people, or workplace wellness people reach out to your managers and ask to be invited, or see if you can get invited into some team meetings, especially virtual ones. Maybe do a breath exercise, do a meditation, do a superfoods bingo, or a, self massage that I started with tonight, right? Yeah. So Melody, what else comes to mind when I share that?
No, I totally agree. And it does not everything has to be like a formal lunch and learn and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Those are
absolutely
as well.
Yeah.
But I think, having managers trained to, at maybe like you said, at the top of their group team meeting, spending 2 or 3 minutes setting intentions, clearing the space, making sure everybody feels present and heard.
Yeah.
Those little nuances actually make a huge, huge difference. But it also, it's part of the culture development. I like to think of it as, lots of little lemon drops scattered all the way through the day throughout the organization. There's lots of small nuances that can make a big difference. It just shifts the whole energy, the whole vibe, and it really makes a huge difference. And those,
again,
and to your point too, with the hybrid work environments, my understanding is that there's more formality now around team check-ins, and not just as a group, but one-on-ones, to really see how people are doing, give space to be heard. There's no counseling, initiatives, but to understand, somebody's got stuff going on at home. There's aging parents, there's sick kids, there's, all kinds of nuances that may be impacting somebody's stress level and ability to really cope and function, and if they need extra space and support, just to acknowledge that and just say, hey, that's okay.
Now, something we've sort of touched on, but I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about it, because it's really the the elephant in the room, or in some cases not, because many more are talking about it, but it's the whole mental health issue that we're experiencing today. And I've alluded to it, that not just employees, but leaders. I mean, during the pandemic and even after, there was such an exodus of CEOs and probably other VPs and other senior leaders and executive members. But coming back to mental health, it said here in big bold letters, it says managers can be the most influential people in someone's mental health journey. I'll read that again. Managers can be the most influential people in someone's mental health journey. Okay. And so what this suggests here, another takeaway, is that the most important thing that managers can do, according to this individual, is to be curious and look for changes in behavior of your employees, right? Or, do the virtual check-ins. And I know my husband does this. He's a supervisor at an oil and gas plant, and he'll do a lot of check-ins, just, one-on-one, or call up or take an employee out for driving the truck around the plant site, just to see how they're doing, right? But it says that as managers, again, talking about visible permission, leading by example, checking in with your employees, watch for things like, are employees withdrawing from meetings? Are they maybe not participating as much or not speaking up as much in Zoom, turning off their camera, right? And not wanting to engage with their camera, seeming distracted, or just their productivity level, their, creativity. Maybe they're a real creative person and their creativity is dropping off. It's not to say that they're pending a depression or a mental health challenge, but it's just a reason, they say, to be really curious, and just ask her, like, is everything okay? I noticed you're not as engaged as you normally are, right?
Yeah, well, and on that point, exactly. In the stress mastery program, did you mention that? Yeah, I'm
No,
not
I
sure,
haven't
but
actually. Sure.
I actually am a stress master international coach as well. And one of the reasons being is I saw how huge stress was and on how much it can impact physical health. But one of the key things I learned about was the amount of stress, and stress isn't all bad, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's relative to the amount of stress.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of on this bell curve, if you want to look at it that way. As we can reach a real peak amount, ideal amount of stress that keeps us really productive, really motivated, lets us really get stuff done, and we thrive on it. And then you get over that bell curve. I call it over that hump. and it's where you start approaching burnout and withdrawal and really getting over that edge. And these are the zones where withdrawal, depression, and more serious things will happen. And if it goes on unchecked for far too long, I mean, this can lead to some very serious health.
Well, can I just add there too? Thank you for that. Really important points there that you mentioned, that in our book, again, I'm not trying to do shameless plugs for the book, but it just relates back to, well, maybe I am, but it just relates back to, gotta have some little levity here. But in all seriousness, seriously, late in the night, in, I don't know, one of the sections, but Carl Loss, who does a lot of work on interpersonal, he talks about I think 5 stages of burnout. And it was really interesting. And we elaborate on it. And it's just really important for us to recognize, right? There is a bit of, I think you mentioned, a continuum, right? Of burnout. And we want to make sure we don't have, we or our employees don't get to that level 5 or whatever, right? We want to get it in level 1 or 2, right? For sure. And yeah, does anyone have a question for us before we continue? We're going to wrap up in a few minutes here, but
Yes,
and open up
there's
questions. But
there's one more
yeah,
from Meg here, and I'll just read it. It
yeah.
says, in your experience, are alternative methods of wellness more effective, ones that give more individual control and can be done out of office, especially remotely? I'm not sure if I understand your question entirely, but you're saying alternative methods of wellness. I know Lisa and I are both trained at Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. We're both holistic nutritionists. I've also done training with James Peterson with Stress Master International as a stress master coach. I've done the training with Lisa as well with workplace wellness.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, we don't have time to get into my whole health history and whatnot here exactly, but I went through 15 years at least of getting nowhere with conventional health. And it wasn't until the foundational pieces of holistic nutrition and health were really opened up to me that I started being able to connect a lot of the dots.
Yeah.
And
I should just say, before you continue, I want to make sure that we're not dismissing or dissing conventional.
Oh, no. There's a place for both for sure. But, after 15 years of banging my head against that conventional wall, it was like,
well,
enough.
I think it's a nice compliment, right? We need to compliment sometimes with conventional.
There's still room for both. And I think it really depends on what you're trying to tackle. And I think, having both, at your availability, I think, so you can make personal, educated decisions is great.
Yeah. And then, you mentioned Stress Master International. They're a partner of ours. And again, if I don't get a chance to mention it, because I've mentioned that we have an executive wellness coach program, which actually starts up again in September, and we've done a lot of enhancements. So Stress Mastery International is a partner, and those that go through that program become a Stress Master International coach. And that's one of the other few additional designations or whatever that you want to call it that comes with that program. So that's just something. But I'm not sure what the question was related to in terms of alternatives, but there's a lot of ways that we can support our employees as executives, support ourselves as executives that, may not be the top of mind type of wellness things, right? Yes, strapping on our sneakers, seeing our executives walk up and down the stairs are common examples, seeing them in the cafeteria, seeing them out walking, or having them participate in wellness events or an online wellness challenge. They're all great and important, and we need to do that. But sometimes it can be even more foundational. You know, it's as leaders and I got something that was just kind of jumped out at me, right? Is watch our words and watch how words impact mindset. Things like how many of us say, oh, I'm super crazy busy. I'm super crazy busy, right? Or stress is a killer. Stress is a killer, you know, like, right? It's the words, you know, wording, language is so powerful, both for our own psychic, right? And wellness doesn't have to be like, again, you know, strapping up the sneaker, you know, yes, that's important, but it's, as I said, embracing those micro steps during the day, right? It may be taking that 5 or 10 minute wellness break or embedding that into your team meetings as a leader. Something as simple but important as standing up during a meeting, maybe having a standing meeting. Everyone's on Zoom, stand up for a bit.
Or a walking meeting.
Or a walking meeting. Yeah, we don't talk enough about our walking meetings, and everyone got phones today. We can do that. But you know, again, on a practical level, like Mel, you know this, many of us do, and I have lower back issues. And Mel, I got to point out, you actually gave me a really good tip years ago. I'm going to share with the group because my back is bad and I do this all the time. And just guys, if you have a chair with armrests, just take yourself and hoist yourself up and down. And then what that does, it realigns and resets the lumbar. Now I'm a personal trainer and I should know this, but I forget sometimes until you brought it up to me. And man, does that make a difference? Because I wrote a book, as you know, again, I promote my book, but I wrote and someone asked me about the book title. It's called Cultivating Healthy and Vibrant Workplaces. Think that the link may be in the book. Anyway, so yeah, so realigning your spine. Yeah, realigning your spine is so important, and standing up. Rule is, you know, if you want to encourage leaders, is 30-30. You know, every 30 minutes, stand up for at least 30 seconds, or 20-20. Every 20 minutes, stand up for 20. Because, you know, you get those tight hip flexors, right? And that just contributes to that sciatica. If you got a sciatica issue, but taking yourself and hoisting yourself. So if you share nothing else with your senior leadership, just tell them that out of this meeting tonight, you learned that you got to reposition yourself.
But don't forget too, and you just reminded me of another really important thing, like simple ergonomics makes
Oh, yeah.
a massive difference in everything as well. I mean, there's just so many different components that we could get
Absolutely.
into. I mean,
Yeah.
we would need a few more hours to cover
Yeah.
them all.
But you know, it's really you know, again, I just to reinforce, it's all the dimensions of well-being, right? It's the emotional, the mental, it's community well-being, social well-being, psychological well-being, career well-being. You know, how do your senior leadership promote career well-being and succession planning? I mean, that's all part of it, because think of the wellness, the wheel of life, right? That wellness balance wheel, or whatever you want to call it. And we have a tool like that we use with our coaches for them working with clients. And it was really interesting when we're doing that hospital contract for the leaders, and maybe Mel, you can comment too, that when they did that wheel of life, they're like, oh, wow, my life is out of balance. Now, we're not to say, like, you know, we use the term work-life balance and we kind of throw that out now. We're calling it work-life harmony, work-life integration, whatever, right? But, you know, there is some truth around balance. Now, balance may look different on different days, but on the end of the week, you know, did you attend to your personal well-being, to your family, to your community well-being, you know, to your spiritual well-being, if it's church or meditation or whatever, right? So you know, that's something really like, I had just quickly, I interviewed for my podcast, Cultivating Healthy and Vibrant Workplaces. You can get that on our website, workplacewellnesscoe.com or Spotify or whatever. But anyway, I interviewed a chaplain who works with a manufacturing company, and they take the wellness balance wheel and give it out to employees. And he'll just do on the spot, sometimes chats with employees. And he said, it's amazing. They're like, oh man, I didn't realize how out of balance. And then they go and have arrange a session with him to talk more about it, right? So yeah, it's just, we can impart and have such an impact and influence on our employees just through, again, watching our words, staying away from things like stress is a killer, or I'm super crazy busy, because then our employees pick up on that and they start using the same language, you know.
No, and I think too, like, you know, we wanted to cover a lot of stuff here in this 45 minutes, and we're just over the 45 minutes now. And I do want to give room if there's any other questions,
Absolutely.
to make sure we haven't left anybody out here. But also just talk as well, just to wrap it up, what are what are the opportunities to support executive well-being and in the whole workplace as well. And I think that other contract we were talking about too at the hospital, these executives, most of them had no idea what they were getting involved in until they met us.
They were pleasantly surprised. They were really,
they were pleasantly surprised.
They didn't realize how stressed they were and how, in a lot of cases, right?
But what I wanted to get at was, within a short few weeks and over the 6 months, I mean, they were all so excited to be able to roll this out to their entire organization, because they felt just how much these benefits helped them. And I mean, everybody. And that's kind of how I felt when I graduated, from CSNM too. It's like, everybody needs to know this information. We all need to know it.
So you raised a good point. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's just end off talking about some tactical things, right? We'll field some more questions in a minute here, but so what are some things that we can do as HRs, workplace wellness leaders, as executives ourselves, bring back to our executive teams? So there's a few things. I talked about the executive wellness circles. Now, we also talk about employee wellness circles and how to facilitate and set them up in our book, but I do address executive wellness circles, which we did with this contract group of team, but also things like, promoting mental health days, organizing them, and working, being an executive sponsor with your leadership, with your workplace wellness team or your HR team or your social committees or whomever, your ERG groups, really get those executives involved, get them involved on your wellness committees, get them involved as executive sponsors. Get them involved in the development of a workplace wellness charter, which we go into in one of our programs, or a lot of our programs actually, and coach them on how to lead by example, how to demonstrate that visible permission. Right? We haven't talked about vacation and breaks, so we did. Remember, Mel? We worked with our team, right? That we coached around that, and we encouraged them to have like a point person, which some leadership teams will have, a designated person when they're on holiday. But there's a lot of executives, I would suspect, that are not using their vacation time. So what kind of message does that send out to our employees, right? We need that time.
End up, saving up their vacation time as well, and having it banked, if they're allowed to. But
or even, I was just going to say to you, just quickly, encouraging and promoting wellness buddies. And that can happen within a senior leadership team. I think we had organically within that team we coached, they had some, little partnerships and little bets they had going between them, right? And you want to speak to that, or did you experience that as well? I know I did with some I coached.
Well, yeah, some of them did. Yeah, I don't think we have time to get into all that. We just got a couple minutes left here. But I think too, and this is the thing, I mean, there's so much opportunity, to bring in external support to help train your people that want to, there's some really good intentioned people that want to get involved in some wellness initiatives and stuff, and they really don't know where to start. And this isn't something that, you come out of general school with. I mean, it's just not available as training. And so these are, specific designations, specific trainings on creating the kinds of programs that can really help support your staff. And they're very flexible, they're fluid, they're not just having fun days, like having the once a year annual golf tournament or whatever. They're loads of fun, and you're probably spending tens of thousands of dollars on that one day, and the rest of the year there's nothing,
and
so there's so many opportunities.
And then just to end off, again, just another plug, if you will, that I mentioned earlier, we have our new executive wellness coach program certificate course starting up in the fall again in September 26th, I believe. So if anyone watching this or participating this evening is interested, certainly I'll be promoting it on LinkedIn. Connect with Mel and myself. Mel, I think, is going to be coming with me and tag teaming as a co-facilitator in that program. So you'll get to again, continue learning from the two of us, and it's really interactive, applied, and you'll get so much more, and the tools that we talked about here tonight to really go out and engage and work with leadership, right? And of course, a lot of what you learn you can apply to employees as well, right? So Mel, if there's any questions, I'm just going to share my screen for a second, And for those who would like to, I know it's a lot of text and information on this slide here, but for those who would like to learn a little bit more about us, so again,
See
you
if I
can
can put it in the chat again too, Lisa.
yeah. Oh, okay.
You
Are
know,
you
if I
able
can
to
copy it.
copy and paste it? If not, it's up towards the
See.
top of the chat. But you can connect with us on LinkedIn or Melody on LinkedIn. And also, if you want to do a screenshot, even if you're watching the replay or right now, you can do a screenshot. And they're not linked, of course, because but we do have them linked in the chat. But you can get our 8 wellness tip sheets, 30 seconds to wellness, which are great to use with executives or employees. And also Mel has a fantastic download as well, free resource that you can access. You just gotta, again, do a screenshot if you're watching the replay. If you're in here, you can grab the links from the chat. And
I just
we'd
put
love
it
to
in the chat
connect with
again.
you. Yeah, we'd love to connect with you. And so we have, I think, a minute remaining. Are there any questions anyone has for us? But before we do that, I just want to again thank the Global Wellness Institute and John Toomey and everyone on their team for inviting us tonight. And we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun here. And hopefully we've imparted some valuable tips and things to think about, you know, and maybe things that you might not have thought about before, or even given a lot of thought to how you can support the well-being of employee or executives, because oftentimes we're focused on our employees, but I would say, please don't neglect your leadership teams and your managers. They need your attention and support. And again, we know that by attending to them, building that relationships, that further then helps to propagate and promote our employee well-being, right? And uptake in our wellness programs. So yeah, so thank you. And Mel, are there any final questions, or anyone have a question or want to come on mic with a question?
I think that was it. Oh, got another one here from Meg. She says, what should one say to get skeptical executives to engage in workplace wellness? Have them phone me.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Or
no,
do you just wait for them to seek it themselves? You know,
yeah,
it's subtle influence. I guess it depends on your relationship with them. Subtle influence, you might want to say, you know, I was speaking with so and so, and you know, they offer like I do, and it's in this offer here. It's on that page. You know, anybody can book a 20-minute free discussion with me just to explore. You know, there's no pressure. It's
yeah. And
just to
the same,
explore what this is. You know, how would this impact me? What might this look like? Because
I'll
it,
make the
you know,
same offer
it
as
is
well, the
new.
same, absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Can I just add
it's
just to end off, so now we gotta wrap up here now, but just one other thing, yeah, so thanks for that, Mel. Just one other thing to leave you with is that what can have a really big impact is to work with your executives, and it might be something as simple as we talked about here tonight. Create that quick win with them. And I know the CEI I worked with, he said that's really important for us, that we get quick wellness wins. So if you get a quick wellness win with them through showing them a breath technique or showing them something, taking them out for a walk and talking about how you can work with them and supporting their employee well-being. But if you can get a quick win with their own well-being and an aha, that will just flip the switch, and you'll have them eating out of the palm of your hands. And so that's one of the best ways to really connect with and build that relationship, right? And get their support.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much, everyone. It's been a delight. You can certainly, as I will do, save the chat. I believe that you can go in and save that chat if you're so inclined. And I'm going to do that. And
I think there's going to be a replay going out soon. I'm not sure how
yeah,
the Global Wellness
yeah.
team is sending those out, but as long as you're registered for the summit,
Mhm.
you should be able to have access to the replays as well.
Yeah. Now I don't
So,
know if there's someone
for
wants
Meg,
to go ahead. Sorry, Mel. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, Meg, this might be, if you have somebody in particular who's skeptical, you know, maybe share a replay with them,
Yeah.
you know, about the summit, and just say, look, this is really huge. It's a global initiative. This is, you know, something that's happening everywhere, and more companies are taking advantage of the benefits. I mean, the
Yeah. So
benefits, the ROI just are massive.
yeah, thank you, Elena, for you said I really enjoyed this. Very informative and positive. Thanks so much. Well, thank you. Thank you for showing up and joining us. It was really appreciated. And everyone that showed up or takes the time to watch the replay. And I'm not sure if anyone from GWI is here to say any final closing comments or not.
Elizabeth, yeah, she's still here.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
still here. Thank you all to those who attended. We'll be sharing the recordings as soon as the summit wraps up. And thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Melody. What a wonderful session. such great information to share around. Thank you so much.
All right. And can you
Thank you so much
advise
for having
when,
us.
do you know, Elizabeth, when the replay will be aired or available?
So our summit wraps up at the end of June, and all sessions will be curated and put back onto the YouTube link, which will be sent to all participating attendees.
Okay, so it won't be till after the end of June that they'll be available, any of the replays, is that
I
correct?
believe so. Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
But
Okay.
thank you so
Nice.
much. Okay.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
good night,
you.
everyone.
Have a
Thanks,
good
Mel.
night.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.